I don't know if y'all been paying attention, but from March of 2020, there has been a theme in the air astrologically. That theme is, what about your friends?
You're now tuned into Spiritual Gangsta Certified with Illy Vish.
Some people really act like it's difficult to understand others, and that is a weird thing on this planet, but something that we all have to deal with. Because really, if you think about it, some of the things that we are taught when we're growing up, they just sound like, they're euphemisms. People just say this stuff. You just go along with it. No one really thinks about why someone is saying it. Like when we talk about your ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. That seems to be really easy for some people, but for others, it seems to be a stretch. And that's weird. Let me stop. No, that's part of the human experience for some human beings. But since we have to interact with people like that, we need to make sure that we're doing it from as objective a perspective as possible. One of the things that we're learning right now with Saturn being in Aquarius is that you have to take your time. You have to slow down. You have to manage. Now, it being in Aquarius, look at any of the Aquarius keywords. This is something I wanted to talk about because a lot of people do not really look at things in a way that I think would best serve them and probably best serve their relationships with other people. To be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes means what I'm asking you to do is treat people like you would want to be treated. Because if you were in their shoes and you were in the position that they're in, how would you navigate it? Now, true, you may never really know from experience, but you've at least been able to imagine at least being in their shoes. That's difficult for some people. And for those it's easy for, it becomes difficult to understand people who are like that. But again, this is a time frame where we're learning how to deal with people we're connected to and set appropriate boundaries and be responsible for what we say and who we associate with. I don't know if y'all been paying attention, but from March of 2020, there has been a theme in the air astrologically. That theme is, what about your friends? Okay? With Saturn being in Aquarius, we can look at Saturn as placing a restriction. It rules the sign of Capricorn. Also being practical and useful. But just like the energy of Capricorn comes through as CEO energy, at a local office, if the CEO comes through, if corporate is coming through, everybody gets their shit together. Why? Because that office is going to be audited. So, this points to something very important with Saturn being in Aquarius. What this means, because Aquarius is the sign of the collective. It is the sign of networks. Okay? Your friendship circles. Saturn says, constrict, restrict. So, this is something that I've been saying for a while. The time frame of Saturn being in Aquarius, talking to people, around a lot of people who essentially are learning they need to check their circle. Be responsible with your circle. Create boundaries within your circle. Everyone does not deserve access to you. That's just how it is. Some people don't want to hear this. They think that years of acquaintance makes for a sturdy and stable friendship. Friendship circles are getting shaken up. So, what about your friends? What about who you associate with? What about who's connected to you in your circle? Use this time frame to reduce. Use this time frame to create good boundaries. Everybody that you know, everybody that you're acquainted with is not your friend. My mother told me that years ago and I didn't listen. It took me years to understand what that really meant. You may be acquainted with someone, you may know them, they may be loosely affiliated with you, but that's not a friend. Acquaintance does not a friendship make. Remember that. Like, this is a time frame for that. For a lot of people, length is an indicator of, how good a friendship is, how strong a circle is. But if we're all learning and growing, all just learning and growing, how do we continue to associate in circles that we've outgrown? How do you do that? It's very draining. I don't think a lot of people think about how draining it is. It's very draining. So like, if people in your circle grow with you, y'all all have your different lessons. I'm not saying everybody's going through the exact same thing at all times, but as long as there is a willingness to grow, that's usually what I find keeps people around. And Saturn rules time and karma. And if you think about human relationships, again, some people think time is what makes a relationship strong, right? Saturn. But what are also other Saturnian themes? Okay, time, karma. And this is on the flip side because a lot of people don't think about how karma makes a relationship appear, or be strong. So there's a lot of different themes to talk about here that I find are interesting, that will be helpful to everybody. Now, of course, you got to look at what's going on in your chart. That's the thing. We can talk about things in general to an extent, but for those who are on the path to grow and learn and heal and thrive, it's really important to understand how you personally are being affected. That is paramount. And another part I want to add to this is, if you are just learning astrology or want to have a deeper understanding of it, one of the best ways that you can help yourself do the work on yourself, the healing that you need to do on yourself, but also increase your learning, is to really understand the different ways that things impact your chart and what it means about you. So like, I know I'm a stickler for highlighting keywords. I noticed some of the people that I've learned the most from have highlighted doing that for a reason. I mean, I've said this on here before. Astrology is literally taking everything known and unknown and breaking it down into one of 12 categories. That's a lot of shit in each category. But if you start with a basis of understanding the general theme of certain keywords as it applies to the sign that we're talking about or the planet that we're talking about, it broadens your understanding for being able to appropriately characterize just about anything and to be able to find out the underlying astrological reason why that is true. Like we talk about putting, you guys may see this when we're doing the Astrology ladies roundtable discussions. If we don't have someone's birth time, we can use their solar chart still by putting their sun on the ascendant. So in discussions that we've done in the past, like the one about Krishan Rock and even the one about Coach Stormy, when you look at someone's sun on the ascendant, so matching the degree and minute of the sun as best you can do, because of course the sun will have moved minutes throughout the day, and if you don't know the time, you don't have it exact. But a lot of people, I've seen different ways that different astrologers will say to look at a chart as per you not having birth time. Some people just set the chart for 6 a.m. because then the sun should be close to or on the ascendant in the chart. Or they choose noon for smack dead middle of the day. Or if you know the time of day but not the exact time, then putting things at certain intervals. Like if you know it was mid-morning, what would you consider that? You know what I mean? Like 8, or if you wanted to, 8 to 10 a.m. maybe. Yeah. But that's up to what you find to be the most helpful for you to do, the method that works the best. I always tell people, if we're going to give credence to astrology being valid, a lot of people skip over something when they argue with people about the validity of astrology, especially people with scientific mindsets that are just like, it's a pseudoscience. You have to do a lot of the same things that you do in science in astrology. So you got to experiment. But it's important now to look at the themes. Specifically in this talk, we're talking about Saturn being in Aquarius, just because I think it's really, really important that people understand this. And especially since, as Marie said, the lovely Marie Rousseau on the Astrology Ladies Roundtable discussion, she mentioned that if you handled the energy of Saturn in Aquarius appropriately with like restricting your circle, kind of cutting down on some things, you would fare better by the time Saturn enters Pisces. However, if people are doing too much constricting, reducing, reduction, then they may find themselves by the time Saturn enters Pisces being alone, because Pisces is isolation. By the time that Saturn goes into Pisces, certain themes that were Aquarian are going to take on a Piscean theme as it regards to how we actually deal with things and are responsible with things. And I would even say bring things into reality, how things come up, how they come out based on the work that we're putting in, the responsibility that we're taking for all things surrounding that which we want to actually have. Saturn is work. Okay? And work requires so many different things in order to be successful work. So if you want to do successful work on yourself, I think you have to really become familiar with your chart. But in doing so, you'll also see how different themes play out. Like, okay, I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm born with the sun at 20 degrees of Pisces. There's a couple of different things that I'm going to look at here for how things play out. Number one, my sun is in the 6th house. So my sun is in Virgo's house. So I'm literally, my vitality lies, you could say, in 6th house themes. What are those things? Well, it makes me very Virgoan. It includes how I handle my day-to-day habits and activities. So you could look at that like, oh, okay, some people say compassion has to be a part of my day-to-day. What else has to be a part of my day-to-day? How do I see in my own life where other Piscean keywords line up with how I'm dealing with the 6th house area of life, which is Virgo? Service to others, services rendered and received, all types of things. So looking at it this way, you'll learn, especially if you have the want, the will, and the wish to desire and are willing to do the work, to learn, to understand deeper, you'll more deeply understand yourself and others. I could also say with my 6th house sun in Pisces, like I like small animals. I always have. It's the house of pets and small animals. Then another way that this plays out, like we'll talk about like Pisces being associated with escapism and isolation every day. And I also have 12th house planet, so this punctuates this. But every day, as a part of my daily routine, I need to be able to isolate myself. I need to be able to kind of go off on my own. So those sorts of things, you can see how the different keywords for things play out. Again, please sign up if you are interested in the course list for my Practical Astrology Course 101. As soon as it releases, you will be notified. So you want to make sure you go to spiritualgangstercertified.com. And at the top right, as soon as you get on the site, it'll say course waitlist. You want to click there. And also any readings right now until December 31st, 2022 are 15% off with code GIVEMESGC, all caps. And you can pay for courses, readings, merchandise. There's also some more merchandise going up. I'm so excited. It's been a long time coming. Here it is though. With Sezzle in 4 payments. So again, looking back at the theme for how you deal with Saturn in Aquarius on a collective level and then on a personal level. Collectively, we can start with basic keywords, of course, for the different iterations of how it may affect people. You saw that we were locked down during Saturn in Aquarius in 2020, locked down because of the vid, and that literally was Saturn expressing itself in Aquarius. Lockdown, confinement, right? Saturnian, the people, the collective, Aquarius. There's so many things that you can see where these universal energies are playing out, right? In our lives, just by looking at things, looking at the patterns. You're going to look at the last time that Saturn was in Aquarius. Doing so, you can get a hint of some of the themes. So when I did that, I remember going, we can very likely have riots in 2020, and we did. But on top of all that, once you understand how things are happening on a collective level, since the collective is very much aligned with you and you with it, no matter how separate we think or try to keep ourselves from other people, it's proof that we're all connected. Everything's connected. So if you can understand in general how something is going to impact the entire collective, you can then narrow things down by looking at your particular chart and see how it's going to affect you. You get hints and clues and cues of how you're personally going to be affected when you look at the overall theme for the collective. That's a good place to start. So if you're learning astrology, if you have the ability to go, okay, I'm going to, at this point, figure out, do I understand what Saturn in Aquarius can manifest as for everybody first? That's where you start. When you're reading different articles about it, or, you're listening to people talk about it, what are the themes that keep coming up? I'm going to also post a link to a workbook that I made for an event that I did up. It'll be donation based. Whatever you can give for it, you can have it. But it has a lot of keywords. It has a lot of meanings and understandings of how energies through the zodiac signs operate and how you can recognize them. I'm telling you, it's not just an understanding, it's a feeling too. When you really do understand, this is my Mercury and Pisces coming out. When you really do understand these energies, you'll be able to feel them. You can walk in the room and feel each one individually or together, the mixing of them, how they're aspecting each other. So if you can do that in the collective, think of how good that'll feel when you can step into your own energy and understand your own energy and take it in for what it is and what it's not. And understand the path of least resistance versus butting your head into a wall. So there's a benefit to this practice that I think loses or gets lost in translation because of how simplified things are, especially online these days with people discussing astrology. It's not like we want to go around berating those that don't have a grasp on it and are just, talking about sun sign. But there's even something to learn in that. Every time you hear somebody talk about a sun sign, especially on social media where people don't back up where they're getting their information or explaining how they derived a conclusion, but people will talk about certain stereotypical characteristics. There's even stuff for you to find in that. Instead of listening to them talk about it like, oh, they're only talking about sun sign. When you hear anybody mention a sign, just think of the sign itself. Don't even necessarily think of it being a Pisces sun or an Aries sun. None of that is necessary. Just think of it as the energy itself, and then see if it fits based on what you know about the sign. But that's what we're going to be covering in the Practical Astrology course. So if you're interested, please do make sure to sign up for the waitlist. Hope you guys have a good week. We'll be back with more content from the Astrology Ladies Roundtable. It's been such a pleasure to work with them. We want to do lives where we can really interact with everyone. So make sure you hit us up and subscribe to the YouTube channel. This will be where we regularly post our entire discussion. So it's the Spiritual Gangster Certified YouTube channel. Now, everybody, Saturn is now direct. I'm going to talk about that more in the next episode. Peace. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Spiritual Gangsta Certified podcast. Be sure to join my Facebook community with over 250,000 beautiful souls at facebook.com, Spiritual Gangsta Certified Official. You can follow me on Instagram at Illy Vish or at Spiritual Gangsta Certified. On Twitter at Illy Vish. On YouTube, of course, my YouTube channel is Spiritual Gangsta Certified. And you don't want to forget about TikTok, where I'm Spiritual Gangsta Official. And of course, the podcast, available on 9 platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And the main page for the podcast is anchor.fm/Spiritual Gangsta Certified. Peace.